Okay, this video is to show what I did to Sand Reaper. I was having a problem with shifting to fifth and reverse. The whole mechanism was just gummed up with dirt and old residual grease from being in there. And I also had to adjust some linkages, and I'll show you a couple parts that are starting to get worn on this and something I have to work on and try to develop into a better system. Starting out, this is the inside torn down. Seats are out, belts are still laying in here. It's a little dirty. I've been playing in the mud and the sand, and you can see there's mud and sand everywhere. Now the shifter, what it is you have your shifting mechanism, and it goes back and forth, and obviously you're into your gears and selecting through that. You can see when you move the shifter left to right, I will try to get in here. This side mechanism right here is what moves that left to right, and what that does is I'll show you where it actuates on the transmission. Now if you can see this in the video, when I'm doing this, that amount of play in that bushing right there, that's one thing I'm going to have to work on, replacing that bushing, and I'm probably going to go to some kind of a bronze bushing or some kind of bushing that's going to be a little tougher than that Teflon bushing, and it won't wear so fast. Now what that does is when you move that left to right, it goes through this cable, back to the transmission, through this pivot system, and you can see the rod that goes up and down, and that's inside the transmission, and that's moving it through the different gear sets inside the transmission. That's where your synchronizers would be in there as it goes through and sets up between the different sets of gears. Now right now if I pull it all the way over where it would be fifth and reverse, and then I can shift it in, that sets it in between the gear sets that are fifth and come back in reverse. When you go to neutral position, which would be third and fourth, that's how that works. First is it pulls it all the way down, and that would be first and second. So you can see I'm getting a lot better movement now. One other thing I had to do when I did this was this arm has just bent a little bit over time. So kind of a combination between the bracket and this arm. If you can get in here and see, this slide unit right here that's inside there, that's another Teflon block, and it works inside these notches. It had bent slightly, and it wasn't centered with the shaft anymore. It had bent in such a way that it was back a little bit behind center on the shaft. Well then, if it's trying to lift that shaft out of there and it's right not on center, that was causing a bind too. So I've tweaked this rod around to get it so the center pivot point and that little plastic shift block that's in there that it slides on is centered with this shaft. So I'm getting a square pull up and down on it, and it's taking some of the bind out of it. Now you can see this is your cables go here. They have pivot points for each one of your gear selections once you get to your different gear sets. There's another adjustment on here. Up there in the front at the shifter, you have a couple little turnbuckles here. And one other thing I'm finding in mine, I had to bend this back plating, because to get the shifter, when it pulls all the way over for fifth and reverse, if I can get in here, you see it's hitting the housing here, and it's already cracked a little bit. But I can't, I've run out of adjustment in this turnbuckle. If I try to adjust it anymore, there won't be enough threads left in there, and I'm afraid that if I tighten the jam nut that holds it all together, it's just going to pull it out of the turnbuckle assembly. So what I did to gain a few more threads was bent this back plate in a little bit, so it brings the cable a little bit closer, and it got me a couple more threads, and it got me the adjustment I want. A little bit more. I'd like to have a little bit more. I'll have to look at finding the turnbuckle. That's going to be kind of hard because it's a right hand thread, left hand thread metric. That's something you just don't run to the hardware store and pick up. The other adjustment underneath is for your first and second throw, or your gear to gear throw is what I should say. And there's plenty of adjustment in that. I adjusted that a little bit. And also, underneath the shifter, you can see where the bottom of the shift knob hooks into that little plastic part. If you take the shifter off and clean it out and clean the cup, and I'll put pictures on the forum of what that looks like on the inside, because this was too long to shoot a video to show a teardown. There's a couple of spring clips in here, and just if you're careful, you can just spread those spring clips a little bit, and this little cup assembly will slip down off the shifter. Then you can just unbolt these 4 bolts, pull out this cotter pin, and the whole shifter will come off, and then you can disassemble the shifter and the shift ball and get all the crud and everything out of there. But this is what I found on mine for my shift problem going. Mainly I had a lot of stuff built up in here, and the other big part was this linkage back here being a little bent out of shape. So got that squared up where it needs to be, got things adjusted where it needs to be. My other issue is going to be this bushing, and take care of that slap of that, but that's going to take a little while before I come up with a really best plan for that, or get some bushing material in here and drill it out to size and get it to fit in there. There's also, if you tear one of these apart, you have a spring here that puts tension on the shifter to keep it so it falls back into the neutral position. And when you assemble this or disassemble this whole area, assembly can be kind of hard with that spring because of the way it pops around. So that's just something you want to be mindful of when you tear it apart, and see how the spring is wrapped around, and it's always a good idea to take pictures of everything. But you can see now I can come over, I can get into fifth, I can get in reverse. I couldn't do that before. Mine was, I would get into about the middle position, and it would get so tight that basically I was taking this whole mount assembly and kind of starting to bend that over. So I've also straightened that out. But that's how you take the shifter all apart, and that's what one looks like. And if you needed to, and the reason I'm saying this is, there's been a few people complain about this, is you can adjust your throw far enough. So some people have problems getting into first or second or fifth in reverse, and wondering if it's a problem with their transmission. A couple times I think it's been problems with transmission, but a lot of times I think these just need to be adjusted correctly, and mainly this one that allows for the throw. So if it's not adjusted correctly, you could actually be bottoming out against the housing and not getting all the way over to where you can get into your gear sets. And like my biggest problem that I've had with this machine has always been fifth and reverse. And I have adjusted this before, but like I said, the biggest thing for me right now is that I have no more adjustment here. So I'm going to be working on this in the future, trying to get this adjustment better, and that'll all fall into place with this bushing assembly and everything here. And ultimately down the road, what I'd like to do is see if I can get this plastic housing machined out of aluminum and make it a lot more solid. I've also looked at it to see if there's any way to shorten the throw, but I don't see how that's really possible, but we'll work on all that at the same time. But that is how the shifter works in a Sand Reaper, and how you can make adjustments. Like I said, there's no real adjustments back here at the transmission, and you just have your cables and your seals. You want to make sure when you do this, you inspect your seals. Those are real important to keep this cable clean, and your seals here. But your main adjustment is just these 2 turnbuckles, and that has everything to do with your shifter here. And as long as you get that located right, then this is centered right, you should be good. And that's what I found with my Sand Reaper and the shifter. Now I got to put it all back together.